McLaren has been the strongest team in 2024, and they're almost sure to win the team championship. Now they're focusing on trying to win the Drivers' Championship too. There are 8 races left and 3 sprint races. Max Verstappen is 62 points ahead, but that gap will probably get smaller because McLaren announced they have a secret weapon that makes them better than other teams. But will this be enough with so little time left in 2024? And will the fighting between their own drivers affect how points are given out? It's safe to say that McLaren is definitely one of the biggest happy surprises in the current racing era. They were able to catch up from being way behind the top teams. They went from being a middle-of-the-pack team to being good enough to win championships. But this didn't happen without making big changes. The team had to rebuild their whole technical department. This led to Norris having a chance at the Drivers' Championship near the end of 2024. This also happened because Red Bull got worse, which has been pretty obvious. The Austrian team can't find speed in their new RB20 car design. If McLaren had made better decisions at tracks like Silverstone, Hungary, and Canada, the gap would probably be much smaller between the top 2 drivers fighting for the title. Still, 8 races is a long way to go, and it looks like McLaren's secret weapon is in their factory back in WOK-ING. Just like Aston, Martin hopes this will help them get better from 2025 onwards. Andrea Stella talked about the improvements the team found in the wind tunnel recently. Other teams can't brag about this because they've found it really hard to match the data they get on the simulator with how the car actually performs on the track. A big factor here is how precise the wind tunnel is. Or to put it simply, how well teams can copy the car's on-track behavior in the tunnel. This helps them make the car work better in different conditions, which includes better airflow and tires that last longer. Talking about this situation, Stella spoke very highly about the wind tunnel his team has in Woking. He said, "I think when it comes to the wind tunnel, it helps that we can use a new wind tunnel with the latest technology because we're dealing with complicated aerodynamics. I think how these cars have changed has led to some challenging airflow physics, and I think that's where other teams, including McLaren, are struggling to easily make improvements. Being in the 3rd year of the current rules has made all teams so close that literally tenths of a second decide who will be 1st or 6th on the starting grid. But we've seen that no matter where we go, McLaren is now the clear favorite. Sometimes Ferrari and Mercedes are competitive too, which stops the Woking team from totally dominating. The fact that Red Bull hasn't won a race in the last 6 events shows how much the rest of the teams have gotten better. But with Ferrari and Mercedes still being unsure about their upgrades, it puts McLaren in their own league when it comes to being confident about the upgrades they're bringing. This is why they can afford to delay floor upgrades that they might have rushed if they were in a more desperate situation like Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes. This makes McLaren an even bigger threat for all the other teams. When talking about why the team didn't push for the full upgrade package, which now seems like a jackpot decision that McLaren made at the time, Stella said, "We haven't brought a big upgrade since Miami. The next important upgrade, not as big as Miami, was in Zandvoort, and it didn't involve the whole floor. It was just a detail. It was some other areas of the car. But there's a reason why we haven't brought some upgrades, because we see that if we had pressed the go button, we might have had some doubts when these parts were tested full size on the real car. So we are taking our time to make sure the development is ready to be taken to the track." Even with this, McLaren still has some problems to solve if they want to win both championships easily. It might be too late for deciding on team orders, something that team principal and team boss Stella and Brown have handled differently. In Hungary, Norris had no reason to be leading the race, but eventually it was the team who messed up the strategy for Piastri, who was leading the race comfortably. To ask your leading driver in the championship to give up 5 seconds of lead just to put the order back and then not switch positions in Monza, where those 3 extra points could have been crucial for Norris's championship fight, is something McLaren needs to fix as soon as possible. Stella believes that Norris should be given priority in situations where Piastri can take points away from him because there's only room for one champion in the sport. While nothing would make McLaren happier than to see their drivers finish first and second again, it might be too late for a scenario like that. Explaining more about this matter, McLaren's team principal said both drivers can still mathematically win the championship, but Lando is obviously in the best position from a numbers point of view. Already in our conversation before Monza, we agreed that Lando is in the best position from a driver's championship point of view. So we will have conversations with Oscar, with Lando, and together, and then decide our rules of engagement. Norris's confidence has stayed quite high, even though he lost 2 positions in one corner, and effectively 10 points in the Drivers' Championship. When talking about this situation more, the British driver was quite stubborn that he doesn't need his team's help to ask Piastri to move out of the way just so he can gain a couple of extra points in the championship. It really looks like McLaren still doesn't understand the opportunity that's right in front of them to win both championships. This is where teams with more experience winning races like Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull tend to do better. But when the team signed Piastri, they knew what type of driver they were putting next to Lando, a competitive one, who wouldn't bow down to any driver on the grid whatsoever. The racing show that Piastri put on in Monza, where he went for a bold and brave move in Turn 4, is exactly what McLaren needs to control for the rest of the season. This is not like the 2016 Mercedes situation, where there were only 2 cars dominating the grid and they were free to fight each other, but according to Brown, this is the philosophy that McLaren will continue with for the rest of 2024. Ironically, this is something that teams like Red Bull will be extremely happy to hear because it means one more driver taking points away from Norris. Being the only driver to not gain a single position on lap 1 in times where passing has become much harder, Red Bull has no choice but to rely on all types of help, even from their biggest rivals. Now it's clear that the Constructors' Championship might not stop at second place rather than third place, given Ferrari's recent performance improvement. When talking about the current situation at McLaren, Brown went on to compare it with the times when Senna and Prost were pushing their cars to the absolute limit. While it's a bold move to compare Piastri and Norris to Senna and Prost, that's exactly what McLaren's F1 CEO did. He went on to say number 1 priority is to win both championships. I know that's 2 priorities, but they are both young drivers who want to win. We've always believed in having 2 number 1s. That's always McLaren's way. It can be very difficult to manage. You know what it was like with Hamilton, and we've seen it with Senna and Prost. Norris and Piastri get along great. They do race each other clean. And then it's philosophical. Are you a 1-car team or a 2-car team? The easiest thing would have been for Lando to just run away with it, and then not have to make difficult decisions on the pit wall. But Stella and I are taking it 1 race at a time. With all this in mind, the situation at McLaren is both great and bad at the same time. There's tension between Piastri and Norris because of their competitiveness and the fact that they don't have a clear number 1 driver when the situation would allow them to do so. It could only get more exciting and fierce from this point. Do you think that the Woking team can sail off clearly with their car upgrades and then have these sweet headaches to deal with afterwards? Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, make sure to check out the video that's appearing on your screen right now.